So, Howard the Duck. What the hell did I just watch? Hey, friends. This time we're looking at one of the most notorious flops of the 1980s. Howard the Duck from 1986. Probably the last franchise Lucasfilm has that Kathleen Kennedy and her minions have not willfully destroyed. I vaguely remember seeing this on VHS years ago, but I didn't recall much about the movie. One of my viewers, Michael, he sent me this here Blu-ray off of my wish list. Thanks, man. That was really kind of you. I think. Man, this movie. Our story goes like this. Howard is a duck, as you may have gathered from the title. He lives on a duck planet that's pretty much just like Earth, only with ducks instead of humans. He comes home after a hard day's work and is suddenly transported to Earth in some kind of a space wormhole. He crash lands in Cleveland and finds himself bouncing around from one danger to another in a repetitive slapstick sequence of mayhem not seen since the opening of Superman 3. Punks, bikers, gang dudes, you name it. Then he meets Beverly Switzer, lead singer of a local band, and he saves her from some dudes trying to get handsy. Fortunately, Howard knows a martial art called Quack Fu, so he's able to help out. Since he's a hero now and has no place to go, Beverly invites him back to her place to stay. Then she tries to put him in touch with scientist types so they can figure out how to help get Howard back to his planet. One scientist dude is using a telescope that caused the accident in the first place, and he thinks he can reverse the polarity of the neutron flow or whatever and send Howard home. But inadvertently, they target the wrong part of space, and they bring an evil space monster to town instead. This here monster merges with the scientist and wants to bring his friends to Earth so they can all take over. Can Howard and Beverly save Earth? Can Howard find a way back home? And what the hell is this? Howard the Duck was based on a Marvel Comics character, one that raised the ire of the Walt Disney Corporation. They thought Howard looked too much like Donald Duck, being risque, rude, crude, and lewd, and chomping on cigars. Disney didn't like the idea Howard might be confused for Donald. So they forced Marvel to make changes to the comic, most notably that Howard had to wear pants. Donald just lets it all hang out, apparently. Ironically, after gobbling up Marvel and Lucasfilm, Disney now owns Howard the Duck. Anyway, this movie was a huge flop, both critically and commercially, and with fans. It did gross enough at the box office to cover its cost, but only barely, and that doesn't count expenses like the advertising budget and the cut taken by theaters. So it lost money. A lot of money. Maybe on the order of $15 or $20 million, which was big money back then. One problem was that the movie did not really follow the story in the comics, except in a vague sort of way, so fans were disappointed. See? Lucasfilm has been ruining stuff and pissing away millions even before the sequel trilogy and the Dial of Dysentery. In our cast, we have Lea Thompson, fresh off the mega hit Back to the Future. She's good here. After Howard the Duck, she agreed to a role in Some Kind of Wonderful, a part she had previously turned down. She grabbed it, though, because she knew she desperately needed to be in a hit movie again. We also have Jeffrey Jones as the friendly scientist, and he's a real bright spot, and seemed to enjoy chewing the scenery as the possessed baddie. We also have a young Tim Robbins in an early and somewhat annoying role as Beverly's friend and wannabe scientist. Ed Gale played Howard the Duck, at least the body of Howard. He's famous for playing Chucky in the Chucky horror movies. He's brilliant here, his body language and movement really breathing life into this costume. So, how about it? Is this thing any good? Well, it's hit and miss. There are some good special effects, and they're mostly practical effects, which are always nice to see. As for action, there's a sequence using an ultralight as an escape vehicle. The stunts with the ultralight are pretty impressive and done for reals, no miniatures or CGI. Thomas Dolby did the soundtrack, and Lea Thompson sings her character's songs for real. The costume and Gale's performance help sell the duck, and all of that is good. But there are problems with Howard the Duck that are hard to get around. First, Howard is realized with a human actor in a costume, but with an animatronic mask. All of the facial movements were operated separately by several artists using remote control. That is, wireless remote control, so no cables coming off the costume. Honestly, this was fairly cutting edge, but like we saw with Baby, a movie I've reviewed elsewhere on the channel, the facial expressions on the duck mask had to convey human emotion. But in both cases, the animatronics were just not quite there yet. The facial movements sorta work here, but are still too stiff to really sell the character, just like Baby. The animatronics are impressive for their day, but just not quite up to snuff. And then there's the big question. Who is this movie for? Is it for kids? Looks like it could be. It's colorful, it's fun, there's physical humor and action, and it's got a duck from outer space. But then you have decidedly adult humor, not really suitable for a kid's movie. I mean, you've got topless lady ducks in this thing, with tatas and everything. That's right, you see duck tatas. They show them to you. So it's a bizarre mashup. It looks all the world like a family or general audience movie, but then duck tatas. And Lea Thompson here, in the movie's most infamous scene, tries to get Howard to rise to the occasion, shall we say? But she's just teasing him. Poor Howard. Lea Thompson looking all scrumptious in those skimpy undies, acting all hot to trot. But she doesn't really want a hot duck. So they could have gone one way, or they could have gone the other. All in on the adult humor, or all in on a kids or family or teen movie. But they tried to do all of that at the same time, so it's a bit of a mess. It's also missing something I can't quite put my paw on. Some undefinable quality that makes a movie resonate. Was it a bland voice for the duck? The scattershot scripting? I don't know. You can see why it wasn't a hit, despite all the good things going for it. Maybe it's a lack of gravitas, or it needed a steadier hand on the tiller or something. Hard to quantify. George Lucas produced this, and despite the infamy, he felt audiences would one day look back and appreciate Howard the Duck, even though the picture was a flop. He felt in the long run, people would eventually warm up to it. Was he right? Well, I did strangely enjoy this one, mostly from that warm, cozy haze brought on by nostalgia for old-school Lucasfilm and 1980s movies. There is quality here. You could tell they wanted to make a good picture, and they were trying. Unlike Lucasfilm in the past 8 years or so. The practical effects are really good, except perhaps for the monster at the end. The matte process really didn't work here. It's about on a par with the Rancor from Return of the Jedi, only it goes on a lot longer. Thompson, Jones, and Ed Gale are all doing their best, and the Thomas Dolby soundtrack is certainly very 80s and serviceable. So all in all, I guess I'd have to give Howard the Duck 2.5 paws. If you've never seen it and want to see some old school filmmaking from the 1980s, you could do a lot worse. It's a guilty pleasure for sure. You take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.